What's up, family? It's Miles, aka I don't know why I'm so used to always trying to start with my AKAs. This is not YouTube. Hello, my name is Miles BRAZAN-HARMON, and this is Attaining Peace, the show where we explore mental health and self-worth in relation to God and spirituality in the modern era. I am your host, Miles BRAZAN-HARMON. I'm an actor, creative director, and digital strategist here in Chicago, Illinois. This show was birthed out of my need to express my faith and also have the tough conversations surrounding mental health and tapping into what it truly means to be one with yourself and attain peace with the circumstances, scenarios, and things around you. So, if you're new, welcome, and I'm so excited for you to join us this time around. But if you're back, thank you so much for coming back and vibing with us another week. Make sure to follow the show at We Are Attaining Peace. That is We Are Attaining Peace on Instagram and Facebook. Join in on the conversation online and offline using the hashtag Attaining Peace. You can follow me at Signed Miles. That's SIGNEDMILES. So I'm just thankful. I want to actually this week start with prayer just because I've been off for 2 weeks, and I the 10th was my birthday, so I had to it was good to just be able to celebrate that and to come into my 20s as with people that I loved, and just have that perspective and get that downtime, because it is very rare I do get the downtime. Besides the show, I do a plethora of things, and I always preach to others about taking time for yourself. So I definitely need to practice what I preach and take more of that time for myself. And then last week I was sick. If you can kind of, it's a little bit more still in my, I'm getting over, between allergies and this weather changing. And here in Chicago, the weather is always something different. It was just cold a couple of days ago. Now it's nice and sunny and warm, and it's supposed to be cold and rainy tomorrow. So it's, things are always changing. So that kind of had me out, but I'm back. I'm feeling almost 100%. So, but I'm rocking with it because I can never be gone from you all too long. So, first, we're going to pray, and then we're going to get into what we're going to talk about this week. So, Father, I come to you today to thank you. Thank you for welcoming us into this new year as a show, as a program, as a community. Thank you for seeing us through the past 12 months of this show. Thank you for blessing our beautiful team, our beautiful WVTC family. Uh, Thank you for bringing us here at this moment, because without you, there would be none of this. I thank you for guiding us through this path as we navigate our different journeys. I thank you for touching each listener every week I get on this platform. I thank you for bringing us together in your name and your name only, God. Thank you for blessing us with the ability to come together as your people and praise you and lift your name up to the highest of the high, God. Thank you each week for blessing us with the ability to strengthen our knowledge of self, of the world, of you. Thank you for guiding us when we are in darkness. And thank you for uplifting us when we are going through what we go through, God, because it is through you that all of this is possible. I thank you for bringing us here. You know, Thank you, God. Thank you. You know, this show has been just beautiful for me. It's been a full year. Our official anniversary was on the 20th. It is I believe the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, today's 24th. Um, so this week we're going to truly just kind of dissect a little bit the show. And I want to go a little bit through the thought process of how we arrived here, and talk. I want to circle back to some things we talked about in a couple episodes, and I want to bring it fully full circle as we complete this 360, 365 days. Well, it's been a little bit more than that, but this full 360 as a show. And when I started this, it was an idea. Attaining Peace, I don't believe was the original name. It was something similar, but it was a little different. And I don't know, something about I knew I wanted a show that was going to tackle different topics that I don't get to do in my other mediums and my other lines of work. Those are very linear, where I or I have to stick to a certain format or a certain degree, or it's in a specific industry. And the beauty of this show is that I wanted to truly establish that you can be a believer in God, and you can still go through things, and you can still be human, but also a believer. And, you don't deserve judgment or ridicule, and that this is a safe space for all kinds of people who believe in Christ. And even those who are non-believers, I want them to also have a space where, even if they don't get it, they know that if they do come down this path, that there is love, there is light for them here, and that they have a community, a family that is going to accept them with open arms into this faith. You know, as they call my generation Generation Z, and I felt like it was a lot of different misconceptions, and there were a lot of different parts of the way we sort of establish ourselves as a generation. There were a lot of misconceptions out there, and I wanted to take the time to, dig into those things a little bit deeper, and tap into what it means to have mental health issues, tap into what it means to, have depression, to not know what you want to do with your money, to, having issues with family, or, not knowing how to weed certain people out your life, or finding truth and perspective and accepting other people's perspective. These were just different avenues of my life, of different things I was going through as a believer in Christ, and all these different things. And I said, I need to share, I need to talk. God was speaking to me and was giving me all these things, and was putting me on the journey. And I felt that I was in a good place in my journey where, you know, then, I mean, of course, I went through several things past, the beginning of the show. And, life has thrown me all sorts of curveballs, and, it's informed a lot of my work, and it's helped me also come up with things to speak about on this show. So when I was thinking of a title, because that's one thing. I believe in the ability to live a life that is peaceful. I believe in the ability to curate your own existence here on this earth, where no one can tell you that you are quote unquote living wrong. I wanted to dispel the idea that we as people can sort of live wrong. I think that there are things that we can do better. There are things that we can tap into that will enrich us, and there are paths that we need to stick to. But I feel like as a people, it makes it more inviting when we don't talk down on one another, but when we sort of find those commonalities and say, okay, I see this in you. I also went through something similar. Here's how I got through it. And maybe even if we're not going in through a similar path, what I have to say may help guide you. It may help aid where you want to go. You know, One thing about my faith journey, I grew up going to church with my mom and my sister, and I grew up going to Catholic school, and these were parts of my life that I adore, that made me who I am. And, you know, I had to make the final decision about my faith. I tell people that all the time. You can raise a family, you can raise kids, but at the end of the day, that person, it's a decision that is personal. You can't. I don't believe in herd belief. I believe that. And when I found God, for real found God, I've always known God. When I found God and started cultivating my relationship with Him throughout my teens, it it really brought me to a different point. It brought me to a different perspective where, you know, me and God started having these conversations where it wouldn't even be that I had to, get on my knees and pray. It would just I would be going through my day and I would be talking to God, or God would be speaking to me or showing me things. And it just made so much sense. And so I love the idea of becoming your best self and that being attainable. And so attaining peace came from the ability to curate your own life, and that it is attainable, that all peace of mind is attainable. And you know it's been a beautiful journey to truly be able to, speak to some of you and hear your stories and hear your perspective about, you know, how you're living as, a child of God, and as people who are struggling with, whether it's mental issues or just going through life. When people think of mental health, they think of you being depressed or you being sad. And sometimes you can be living a life that's great, but you still can check in on your mental health. You don't have to be in deep despair to have mental health. Everyone has a mental health to a degree, has some sort of mental health, whether it's good mental health, bad mental health, in between, whether you're in the process of getting to a better place with your mental health. And I wanted to bridge the gap between that, because a lot of the people who I encountered when I talked about mental health, they often told me that, their concerns about their own mental health were dismissed, or they would talk to a parent, or they talk to, someone who they would seek for guidance, and they would tell them, pray about it, talk to God about it. And I'm a firm believer in talking to God about it, but I'm also a firm believer that we as a people have to partner with God to get to where we want to be. We can ask and ask and ask, but we have to apply ourselves to the work. God is going to move how God wants to move. We have to also apply ourselves, whether it's taking in the word, whether it's seeking, a faith family, a faith community, or just doing self study. And in a sense, that's what this show is. It's self-study. It's where we come together for 30 minutes, hour, depending on the topic, and we dissect these different um these different avenues of life and how you can navigate them, and whether, you're going through something traumatic or you're just being. That's where I find myself in the state I find myself in the most of these days is I'm in a state of being. I'm not struggling. I'm not down and out. I'm not sad. I mean, I'm happy. I'm very eager. God is amazing. But I find myself in just a state of I'm here. And I feel like that for me has been the most peaceful. I don't have to be smiling from ear to ear. My peace is the ability to be without it being disrupted. And it's been many a time in my life where I found this sort of peace, and I know that it's possible, and it's constant applied work. That's why I started doing the homework assignments towards the end of the episode, towards the end of the is it, I guess, episode, yeah, that works, towards the end of each live or recording session. And because I believe that we have to, this is constant work. It's not once a week, it's every day we work on ourselves to find peace within our lives, within circumstance, within ourselves. because at the end of the day, it's about sort of taking back that control. And I wanted believers to know that they also have control in this process. God is almighty and God knows your whole story before you even see it. But there is still some control there where you have the power, and sometimes it's not even in the physical sense, but in the mental sense, where we stop um, allowing outside influence, outside factors to affect our headspace, to affect our mental state. This is a collective journey where I never wanted any of my listeners to feel that, I had it all together. I feel like I say it every episode that this is a constant process that I too am learning and going through these things with you. And I had a conversation with a young woman recently, and we talked about how important it is to say no, and not in to people, but to thoughts. Those thoughts of anxiety, those thoughts of sadness, those thoughts of despair. Sometimes you have to say no to yourself. It's not just in the physical world where you're saying no to people, but you have to say no to insecurity, to judgment, to second guessing yourself. Those are skills that you start to acquire. And, I talk about building your toolkit. Those are one of those skills that you put into your toolkit. So it's a culmination where each week we begin to continue to build on top of what we talked about the week prior. And it's been such a beautiful thing. I don't think people truly understand how things can change, let alone in the matter of like a day or two, but just a year. We've been here a year where I've gotten this camera. Well, I started in the station, but where I when I moved to doing this show remotely, um, and I got my tripod together. Well, I started on my MacBook. And then I decided the quality looked better on the phone, so we got another phone, and then we got the ring light, and then we've been playing around with what the backgrounds look like, and it's this just constant building. And I want this to always feel like we're building. You know, this is never a place where I want my listeners to feel as if that they are behind. This is a moving process, a feeling process where we come together and we feel all the feels. That's been the best thing, I feel. Since I turned 20, I've been honestly on autopilot. I was taking a lot of time to just rest. I was enjoying just being. And this week was one of the first weeks where I truly got back to my regular. And and it was a little hard at first because when you have a lot of, and I don't even necessarily want to say downtime, but when I put myself on autopilot where I'm still moving throughout the world, but I'm not actively there. And by not actively being there, I was able to truly rest my mind. And so it's been very different getting back to work and putting myself back in full force 100%, and looking around and being active. You really see everything when you are being intentional about being active in everything that you do. Where you don't put something on autopilot, or you don't just let things move, where you're involved in every piece of how your life moves. And it's honestly been beautiful. I realized I really do love what I do. And even though I've always loved what I do, and I don't feel like there's never a day I wake up and I don't love what I do, but my jobs feel less like jobs these days, and it's it's a beautiful thing. And I share that to say that in this life, we have to take things one step at a time. We have to be present. We can't let these moments fly by anymore. You know, I know so many people who have become so desensitized to life. And I think that's the worst way to live. I want to feel it all. I want to feel every emotion. And I want that for everyone where we feel every emotion. Like I want people to be vulnerable. I want us to be mad. I want us to be angry. I want us to be ecstatic. I want us to be happy. I want us to feel all the feels because that's how you know that you are living. I was having another conversation with one of my friends and they were telling me how, they are going to slow down on working and they're going to quit one of their jobs and just focus on spending more time with themselves, not by themselves but with themselves, and taking more time for themselves. And it was honestly, it came to a shock to me because they were someone who I felt honestly outworked me sometimes. I have the beauty of a lot of my jobs are digital and I can work from anywhere and do things, but they were a person who their job is very hands-on and very physical and they have to be involved and be there and be present. And it kind of came to a shock to me hearing them tell me that they needed a break because even though I know it was weighing on them and I know it was taxing on them, and I'm beyond excited that they've decided to take more time for themselves. It just kind of it informed me a lot that you have to live this life. You have to. We can't wake up every day and let the days just go by. And I know it's easier said than done, but it starts with the intention of I'm going to try to make the most of every day. And maybe you go a day where you only remember what you did in the morning. But when you start building that habit where you check in with yourself and say, hey, what did I do today? It's when you get to the end of the day and you can't remember all that you did, that is where you have that disconnect. You know, Even now I've started truly taking my time. I live in a city, I walk a lot. And today was one of those days where, I normally try to get to the office in 20 minutes. I took my time. I got there in 30. I got coffee. I sat at the Starbucks for a little bit, just waiting on my stuff to come up. And it was something just different about that. I hadn't been in the process for a minute. And when you get off autopilot, you really do realize how much you miss. You know, I came home today and I looked outside my window and I felt like, I've been living here for it'll be 2 months at the end of this month. And it was the first time I think I looked out my window, like actively really looked out my window in maybe a couple weeks. And just because of things that have been going on and birthdays and traveling and all that. But when you get off autopilot, you really realize how much there is around you. And so I encourage you as my listeners, as my faith family, as believers, as humans, to take more time to be here, present in the moment with yourself, with your thoughts, with the people around you, because there's so much to see. There's so much to see. God is so good. The ability to wake up every day is the chance to do something you didn't do yesterday. Life is so uncertain and we don't have all the answers. Only God has all the answers. But when we enjoy our time and claim our time. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't claim time as theirs. People say, "Oh, time is flying." When you make time yours, when you take ownership of your time, you garner that control back. When you say, "I have this hour is mine." It's not the time is flying or the time is going slow or, the clock doesn't own me. I own the clock. And that's how we have to have our relationship with time, is where we own it and it does not own us. Because when you allow time to own you, that means on you're not moving intentionally. You're moving unintentionally. You no longer become, I'm not gonna say the center of your universe, but you no longer become the axis in which everything moves around you. You become a blip in the whole picture. And I encourage you to not be a blip in the whole picture, because this life is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So I leave you with that. Life is so beautiful. You know, this show it's kind of like it gets my week started. It's a Monday, it's 8 p.m. I've worked a full day, and it brings me joy to be able to talk about the beauty that God has brought into my life and the lessons this journey is teaching me every day. And when you stop living, you stop hearing the lessons. And so that's why we have to seize the day. We have to take back that control and be present in what's going on around us. You know, today was one of those days where things just felt so calm and so still. And normally, calm and stillness and just quiet bothers me. But because I was active in my day, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air. Things weren't moving super fast. I felt in control. I felt as if it was all on me. And we've talked about control on this show a lot, but it truly is between control and freedom. Those are the two biggest assets to curating your own life, is control, and not in the physical sense, but in the mental sense, where you take control of how things maneuver in your head. And freedom, as in removing outside influence, um, roadblocks, maneuvers. When you remove those, your path becomes so much clearer, because you're not focused on keeping up. You're not focused on trying to fit into someone else's story. You get to finally see your own. And I want us to continue to see our own stories and to tell our own stories, because this life is such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'm so thankful for every single person who has, watched us on Instagram Live, watched us on Facebook Live, listened on WVTCradio.com. It, I could not be more thankful. You know, that is the one thing I think this next chapter, this next year, as I move into another year of my life, as this show moves into another year, because we're not stopping. It's only up from here, and it brings me so much joy to be able to connect with you all. And so I leave you with this. You are the one. And when you realize that you are the one, when this is you, is your body, your life, it makes living so much more easier. It's so much noise out here. So many people telling you that this is what you should look like, this is what you should do. I'm not going to necessarily tell you what you should do. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And by you being that one, it makes everything so much brighter because there's no comparison, there's no ego, there's no need to defend. Because when you're living openly and honestly as the one, you become the power. You find your power. And that is attaining peace. It's finding your power. It's taking the control to find your power. And so next week, we're going to deep dive into what it truly means and what power can look like in the mental sense. We're going to break down how we can take back our power once we've lost it, but also where our power can fit in to our faith. Because that's another thing I don't think people realize, it's not one or the other. It's not me or my faith. It's you have to live in your faith and live in what you believe. As a believer, I live in my belief. And by living in my belief, it strengthens my relationship with God. And by strengthening my relationship with God, I strengthen my relationship with myself. Because I know that there's nothing else besides me and God that matters. And that's the truth. So thank you all so much for rocking with me this week. I know it's short, but I'm just gleeful. I cannot dissect anything negative or bad. I just want to preach good news, the gospel, the good news. So I will see you all next week and we will talk about power. Make sure to follow the show at We Are Attaining Peace. That is We Are Attaining Peace. That's on Instagram and Facebook. Use the hashtag Attaining Peace on all platforms. Join the conversation online and off air. Make sure to follow me at Signed Miles. That's SIGNEDMILES. Thank you so much. Follow the network at WVTC Radio. Thank you to those who are watching on Facebook Live. And thank you so much for listening on WVTCRadio.com. I'm your host, Miles BRAZAN-HARMON, and I will see you all next week right here. Peace.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago. And